on a lonely rural highway in northern New Hampshire, a couple reportedly has a close encounter with something not of this earth. Betty and Barney Hill believe they are being followed along Route 3 by what initially looks like a moving star. They stop the car and realize that the light is actually a disc-shaped craft. At 10:15 p.m., everything suddenly goes black. The Hills believe that at that moment, they were abducted.
Betty and Barney Hill case stirred up a whole new range of interest in alien abductions.
I'd seen several UFOs I'd been experimented on.
Why would a guy in a small town start talking about his abduction experience unless he really, really believed it happened to him?
People were taken aboard spacecraft by extraterrestrials.
The stain is something to do with the abduction event.
They were biologically related.
Armed with brand new leads and physical evidence never before seen, the team examines the phenomenon of alien abduction.
This is the key case with the best evidence in all the abduction scenarios around.
And gets a first-hand exclusive look at a surgery to remove a supposed alien implant.
I don't have any reason why that could be there.
Which is then subjected to exhaustive laboratory analysis.
We actually detected a radio frequency.
The object is moving on its own.
It's just freaky.
Alien abductions, psychological phenomenon.
We'd like to think he's been abducted, but that this whole thing may be an amazing put-on.
Or reality.
Skeptics, you just don't know what you're talking about.
The team from UFO Magazine opens case number 61203, Abductions.
Why is it that people think of that image whenever they hear the word aliens? You know, the big eyes and the big head? I mean, how do we even know what aliens really look like?
That was an idealization of the image that Betty and Barney Hill first talked about when they drew that image after their abduction in 1961 in New Hampshire. And that began the whole ball of wax in the United States of America. When you look at the 1950s, that golden age of UFO contact, they all call themselves contactees. But in the Betty and Barney Hill case, contactees become abductees.
September 19th, 1961. Betty and Barney Hill are returning from a vacation in Canada, driving south on Route 3 near Franconia Notch, New Hampshire.
I kept driving and driving and driving.
As they recount, around midnight, an abnormally bright star catches their eye. The Hills are puzzled at first.
Saw it as it swung around to the rear of my car.
And then became terrified.
It is there. It's right above us, Betty. Look.
They realize the light in the sky seems to be following them.
I was hurrying to get away.
What they first believed to be nothing more than a bright star becomes to Barney's eyes a hovering craft 80 feet wide with a double row of windows.
And I made a turn.
The disc reportedly follows them, flying directly over the car.
And I don't know why I had to make that turn. And I was lost.
And suddenly, all the Hills remember next is continuing their drive south on Route 3. To their astonishment, they've somehow lost hours of time.
Even though they consciously remembered aspects of the entire incident, they didn't remember what happened in the missing time they experienced between the time they saw the spaceship and the time they were in their car driving back to their house.
As will later be recounted in the best-selling book Interrupted Journey, which introduced the Hills case to the world. Under hypnosis, they both reportedly remembered struggling against small figures or humanoids. They assert that the aliens appeared to regard the Hills as laboratory specimens. One of the most important aspects of the Hills case is their claim that their abduction left behind physical evidence.
Guys, if you can get up to New Hampshire, we could reopen this case, and if you can get any evidence out of it, I know just the laboratories to analyze it.
All you do your respective jobs, let's pack our bags and get off to New Hampshire.
the team is in northern New Hampshire to trace the route the Hills took that night.
You can't study UFOs without seriously pondering the possibility that they will interact with us and therefore can't expunge the abduction phenomenon.
We're going to meet Kathy Marden,
Oh,
who
the
was
niece.
Betty's niece,
That's-
who was
yep.
alive at the time of the abduction, and she was actually a witness to what happened to Betty and Barney Hill that night.
Kathy Marden was 13 when she first became aware of the Hills abduction story. Following Barney's death on February 25, 1969, Betty grew closer to Kathy
Hi, Kathy.
and confided private details about her ordeal. Betty's death in 2004 left Kathy the greatest authority on the subject. Her book provides new insight into the case.
We are heading toward the first encounter, correct?
That's correct. The first location where Betty and Barney actually stopped the car and got out with their binoculars to take a look at this craft.
According to Kathy, there were 3 different locations where the Hills spotted the alleged craft as they traveled down Route 3. First, at the Mount Cleveland picnic area, 17 miles south of Lancaster. Second, near Cannon Mountain. And finally, at a lake 1 mile south of Indian Head, where they stopped the car and were reportedly abducted.
This is the spot, the Mount Cleveland picnic area. This was the first stop that Betty and Barney made. Betty's eyes were drawn to a new light in the sky. Betty took the binoculars first. Betty looked at the moon.
Okay.
And as she was looking, she saw an odd-shaped craft. It was flashing multicolored points of light as it traveled across the face of the moon. It just immediately swooped down, and no sound. That was the perplexing thing. She, at that point, saw the object shaped. It appeared to be rotating, flashing blue-white light. Moving in a stair-step pattern, and it seemed to be bouncing around in the sky. By that time, the craft had moved northwest toward Vermont as it passed over the Cannon Mountain aerial tramway.
Barney begins driving again, racing to the safety of the nearest town. But the craft continued to track the car.
The craft shifted ahead, stopped, and descended to within about 100 feet of their vehicle, causing Barney to stop the car in the middle of the highway. He looked up at the craft, and there were approximately 8 to 11 figures in the window looking down at Barney. Barney wanted to get away from there and fast.
I was hurrying to get away, and I kept driving and driving and driving, and I made a turn.
Barney made a left-hand turn onto a dirt road. But there were about 6 to 8 men in the road, and they were confused. What are these men doing in the road? They really had no idea until the men divided into 2 groups and started to approach the car that they weren't human.